What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of WNBA Today on CLNS Media, a brand new YouTube show where we will be discussing the WNBA all season long, bringing on guests, bringing on other media members, bringing on players, coaches, you name it, we'll have it on this channel. So go like and subscribe. If you're watching this on a different YouTube channel, go find WNBA Today on CLNS. In today's episode, I wanted to discuss, first of all, another phenomenal game 3 where the Phoenix Mercury escaped the New York Liberty 79-73 to punch their ticket to the semifinals. Just one thrilling game after another in these WNBA playoffs. So feeling super lucky to get to watch them in real time, honestly, because all of these games could be blowouts, and instead we're seeing these series go to game 3, which in the first round it's best of 3. So game 7 energy, and then they're all going down to the wire as well. So great win for the Phoenix Mercury, who honestly I think most people counted out, despite the fact they were the higher seeded team here. Just people went with the defending champs, but the Liberty just haven't been right all season long. And I think you saw, I don't want to say a lack of heart, because I don't really like talking like that about basketball players. But I just felt like, Phoenix came out with more energy. They were quicker to lose balls. They just seemed like the more inspired team. And outside of Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, I think New York just really didn't get much from their supporting cast. And they have a very talented supporting cast of all-stars and, finals MVPs and just really elite talent. So that's first. And then I also am going to discuss a little bit, previewing the next two series here. We have two exciting matchups. One is the Las Vegas Aces versus the Indiana Fever, which I don't think anybody expected the Indiana Fever to make it to the semifinals. And then we also have the Phoenix Mercury and the Minnesota Lynx, which is actually going to be a really good matchup, seeing Alyssa Thomas and Evisa Collier square up, two of the best players in the game right now. Obviously, A'ja Wilson is going to go up against Aaliyah Boston, fellow Gamecock. So a lot of storylines here, a lot of things to watch in both of these series, and the winner of both will face off in a best of 7 WNBA finals. So for those of you that are kind of newer to the WNBA, the way that the playoffs work is the best, the top 8 seeded teams in the league make the postseason, so 8 of 13. And then the first round is best of 3. So it does lend itself to more upsets in theory than a normal, and best of 5 or best of 7 series would. So it's best of 3, and then afterwards it's best of 5 in the next round, and then it's best of 7 in the finals. And this is the first year that the finals has been best of 7. Honestly, after how competitive last year's finals was, it seems to be a perfect decision. So right now we have 4 teams remaining: the Phoenix Mercury, which were the 4th seed, the Indiana Fever, which were the 6th seed, obviously upset the Atlanta Dream, and then the top 2 seeds, the Las Vegas Aces and the Minnesota Lynx. So that's who's left. And before I get into kind of making my predictions for both of those, and I honestly went back and forth quite a bit before deciding who I'm going to go with in these games, I wanted to talk a little bit about the game that allowed Phoenix to punch their ticket to the next round. So first of all, Phoenix has been really good all season long. I think they went a little bit under the radar. One, because they don't have like the flashiest stars. So Alyssa Thomas is one of the best players in the game, but she doesn't quite have the national popularity that like an A'ja Wilson has. And I think that's part of it is just her personality. She's more subdued. Part of it is also stylistically, her game is less flashy. Like, she has a lot of triple doubles, but they're very kind of like fundamental triple doubles. I saw somebody tweeting yesterday, like the WNBA has a Nicole Jokic, and she's not quite Jokic, but they have differences in their games and their styles, but there's something there. She is like a triple double machine in the way that he is, and she does elevate everybody around her. Like, playing with Alyssa Thomas just makes you better, and it makes life easier for you. And she's physical. She's a better defender than Jokic. Jokic is a better shooter. She doesn't shoot threes. So not the perfect comparison, but she has really been the hub of the Phoenix Mercury all season long. And they acquired her in the offseason. Up until now, she spent her entire career with the Connecticut Sun. I covered the Sun the last couple of years, so got to know her a little bit. And I think she's probably the most underrated player in basketball, if I had to pick one, just in the sense that she's an all-time great and she just hasn't really received her flowers. And I do attribute it to play style. Like, she uses her strength and her physicality to just dominate players. That was on full display in this game, where she got called for maybe 1 or 2 offensive fouls, but every single play, she's basically ramming into her defender, which listen, if you can get away with it and if she's not called a foul, then it's not a foul. And I think it just looks like an absolute nightmare to go up against her. That's all I was thinking when I was watching her yesterday. Alyssa Thomas ultimately was the reason I think that they win this game. She finishes with 20 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Um, Key plays down the stretch, a key deflection down the stretch with the clock winding down. It wasn't just Alyssa Thomas, Satu Sabali, who got a lot of flack for her game one performance. She was 2 of 17 from the field in game one. She has a monster game three after a good game two as well. So Satu Sabali, who is a WNBA All-Star, who hasn't quite had as many awesome playoff moments as some of the league's other stars. She was the leading scorer for the Mercury in this game, 23 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. So big time performance for her. And then we had a couple of clutch baskets down the stretch. Kalia Copper hit one that was kind of iced the game. Dewana Bonner, who was signed with the Phoenix Mercury midseason after being waived. She decided she wanted to be waived by the Indiana Fever. She reunites with Alyssa Thomas, who is her fiance and also her former teammate in Connecticut. And she kind of struggled in this game, honestly. Like, she was 2 of 8 from the field. I thought she struggled quite a bit defensively with Breanna Stewart, who had a monster performance on one leg. But ultimately, she hits one of the biggest shots of the game. It was on a broken play with 2 seconds to go off a baseline inbounds, and she just kind of threw it up there, and it bounced off the front rim and went in, and she had a crazy celebration. And I think in that moment, you knew Phoenix was pulling this off. So shout out to her for that big basket. And then obviously, contributions across the board. Natasha Mack, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the WNBA as well. She, is just solid, makes things happen defensively. And in the 19 minutes she gave them, she made quite a few good things happen on the defensive end. Monika Koa-Makani, who was on my all-rookie team, also as a strong defender that I think you can give a lot of credit to her for helping stifle the Liberty's offense. So there's some contributions across the board here. But really, it starts and ends with Alyssa Thomas, who is going to be a nightmare for Minnesota to deal with. She's going to be a nightmare for any team to deal with. And that's just, that's why Phoenix went out and got her this offseason. And she's played with Connecticut her entire career. And I think this is a really good supporting cast around her, and they can really make some noise. So on the New York front, like, watching this New York team be kind of overthrown in the first round after they were the WNBA champions last year was a little bit surreal. Especially because when they signed Emma Miesemann, like, everybody was like, okay, how do you, like, they just won the title. Not only now do you have last year's core, but you also added Natasha Cloud, who is a great two-way player in her own right. And then you go ahead in the middle of the year and add Emma Miesemann, who is a former finals MVP, Belgian star who has been one of the best players in the world for a long time. And the Emma Miesemann fit just never really materialized. In this game, she is 0 for 3 from the field, scoreless, 9 minutes. Like, I never would have guessed when they signed her that that's the kind of impact you would see in a must-win game. The biggest story for me was Jonquel Jones, who at her best is one of the best players in the WNBA, and at her worst was last night. She was 1 of 10 from the field. I thought that she made some, untimely fouls, got a tech for getting upset, like, was very frustrated in this game. And I don't know if it was the physicality or if it was something else, but was just nowhere near the player that she was last year when she was finals MVP for the same Liberty team. I don't like to, boil things down to, like, people didn't show up, but it did feel at points that the only players that showed up for New York were Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, which, considering the fact that Breanna Stewart is playing on a sprained MCL that she hurt in game 1 of the series, I would not have guessed that she would be the only Liberty player to score in the fourth quarter of this game. She scored all of New York's 14 fourth quarter points. And on a team that has players like Jonquel Jones, former MVP, Sabrina Ionescu, perennial all-star, Natasha Cloud, Leonie Fibic, who was one of the best rookies in the league last year, who also had a really difficult night here, took a knee to the rib early on, and I think that impacted her as well. But they just could not get anything going. So Breanna Stewart did everything she could to kind of will this team to victory. She finishes with 30 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So, like, really, like, an all-time performance for her. Sabrina added 22 points, and that was it. Like, they really did not get anything from anybody else on this roster. And when you're playing against the Phoenix team that is seeing contributions from multiple key players, that was kind of the ball game. So I thought New York just obviously their massive shooting struggles. They were 21.9% from three, 7 of 32. They shot 33% from the field. Like offensively, they were struggling even when they got good looks, but the energy just wasn't there. Like 2 offensive rebounds the entire night when you're missing so many shots is unacceptable, right? Phoenix has 8 offensive rebounds, so they got out rebounded 49 to 33. Just like that's you're never going to be able to make that up and also be struggling from the field. So down the stretch, they had opportunities. I mean, they only lose this game by 6, but that's the credit to Breanna Stewart, who just found a way to keep them in it. So the defending champ season comes to an end earlier than they hoped, earlier than most people expected. I think even though they had a difficult year, and they were the 5th seed, like I think a lot of people still thought that their championship pedigree, their collective experience was going to carry them in this first round. And instead, a Phoenix Mercury team that has not played together for long, Satu Sabali, Kalia Copper, Alyssa Thomas, those are 3 all-star players, but those are 3 players that have not played together before the season. So now you're kind of figuring out how to complement each other's games as good as possible. They have rookies that are major contributors for this roster. So, on paper, I understand why most people pick New York. But Phoenix was the better team through 3 games. They really were, because honestly, even game 1, Alyssa Thomas has an opportunity to win the game at the buzzer, misses a layup. And if you watch that post-game press conference where she is basically like, it's, I've taken that shot a million times. Like, it happens. And she was not overly rattled. She was not overly emotional. And when I was watching that, I was like, maybe Phoenix comes back and actually pulls this off, because when you miss a shot like that, that can either kill you, or you can say, we were right there and we can put together 2 wins right now. And that's what they did. And now they're going to face the Minnesota Lynx in the next round of the playoffs. Obviously, the Minnesota is going to be the heavy favorite in this series, just considering the fact they have been the most dominant team all season long. First seed by 4 games over the Las Vegas Aces. They have Napheesa Collier, who is a MVP, I don't know, front runner anymore, but one of the front runners for MVP. They have Alana Smith, Defensive Player of the Year, co-Defensive Player of the Year, I should say, with Asia Wilson. So just a stacked roster. Kayla McBride is huge. They add DiJonai Carrington, who did hurt her ankle versus the Valkyries in game 2. I saw some reports that she was on crutches yesterday, so we'll see if she's good to go. But across the board, there's a lot of depth on this roster. I haven't even mentioned Courtney Williams, the starting point guard, Natisha Heidemann, who you sometimes think is a starting point guard because she's playing so good off the bench, number 1 defense in the league. Like, there is a lot there that Minnesota has, and it's going to be a handful for Phoenix to deal with. But they have been so physical, and they have, I think, already kind of outdone some expectations. So my prediction for this series between the Lynx and the Mercury is that Minnesota is going to win in 5 games. So I do think it's going to go down to the decisive game. And I think it's going to take a big time Napheesa Collier series. And I think we're going to get that, because Napheesa Collier is, I think, most likely not going to win MVP based on just the ballots that I've seen so far. And it's not, there's 72 voters. And I haven't seen all 72 ballots, but that's the sense that I'm getting. Like, I think Asia Wilson is the slight front runner here. But Napheesa Collier probably sitting there being like, I put together the best season of my career. We were the best team in the league. They feel like they got robbed last year in the WNBA finals, in that game 5 with a difficult call on Alana Smith, and then they lose in overtime. So, like, this Minnesota team, they feel like they are on a mission this season. It does remind me of the San Antonio Spurs the year after Ray Allen hits the corner 3 and they lose the NBA title, and then they come back the next year and they just dominate everybody. Like, that's the sense I get from this Minnesota team, and I do think that they are going to pull this off and win the title. But Phoenix is not going to go away quietly. So my prediction is Minnesota in 5, and I think we're going to see some legendary performances from both Napheesa Collier and Alyssa Thomas, who are 2 of the 3 best players in the WNBA right now and have been for the last few years. So really looking forward to that series. I think it's going to be very competitive. It's going to be a defensive battle, because these are 2 teams that can really lock down defensively. And it's going to come down to the other players, the role players. Like, what are you going to be able to get from, DeWanna Bonner off the bench? She's somebody that can go off for 15 points, or she can also be really quiet, as we've seen. Sammy Whitcomb. Like, there's a lot of players in this league that are, maybe they go for 2 points or they go for 15, and that's what's really going to make an impact in this series. So really looking forward to that one. The other matchup in the WNBA semifinals is between the Aces and the Fever. And I think Everybody probably expected this to be Ace's dream because the Dream were the 3 seed, they're fully healthy, the Fever are missing literally half their roster. All of their primary guards have gotten injured this season, to the point where Odyssey Sims, who they picked up last month, is their starting point guard and is doing a hell of a job too. But that's gonna be the matchup now, right? It's gonna be Fever Aces. And obviously on paper, everybody is going to pick Las Vegas because they won 17 games in a row to close the season. Obviously, they dropped game 2, but they pull away in 3 games against the Storm, a Storm team that probably should not have been the 7th seed, but just has been maddeningly inconsistent. And Indiana, meanwhile, is very shorthanded, and even there were moments against Atlanta where they just you could see on the floor they don't have the firepower to compete, and they somehow still do it. Like there were moments in Game 3 versus Atlanta where I was like, I started finding myself really rooting for this Fever team because they just the storylines of like all these players that were out of the league a month ago that are now getting opportunities, and everybody's they have a whole injured starting 5 on the sidelines, and they're still in it night in and night out. And so I always find myself rooting a little bit for the underdog. And they found ways to get baskets off of broken plays. Kelsey Mitchell is one of the best bucket getters in the league. She was announced as the one of the 5 finalists for WNBA MVP. She was in my finalist. She was on my first team All WNBA, and she is just it's hard to overstate her scoring impact. Not just the numbers that she's been putting up, but without as many options around her, right? It's like one thing to put 20 points per game when you have so much talent on the floor with you, but really like she is the player that everybody's worried about on the defensive end. She's at the top of everybody's scouting report, and she's still getting hers. And you saw that in the first round. What this series is going to come down to me, is Aaliyah Boston, because Asia Wilson has been insane in these playoffs. She has 38 points in the clinching game 3. She has been defensively just locked down. Asia Wilson has had an awesome year. Like she's probably on her way to a 4th MVP award. But especially the second half of the season, she's been on another level in this postseason as well. Now you're going to see Aaliyah Boston have to go up against her, and Aaliyah Boston is a great player in her own right. And I think I think she'll be on the All WNBA team. She was on my second team. I think she's one of the players that's kind of borderline. So I've seen her on some ballots and omitted on others. But whether she can do it on both ends is going to be key here, because I'm at the point now where I really do feel like Kelsey Mitchell is as reliable as it gets when it comes to postseason success. Like she has been really reliable throughout the series. She's been reliable. She was reliable last year as well. And so I do think that that's kind of a given. But the question is, who is she going to be able to rely on around her? And there's just not that many options. Like they don't have the same margin of error that other teams might have. So Aaliyah Boston has to be massive for this team throughout the series. She is their X factor, and obviously she's a great player in her own right. She's been an all-star every year. She's been in the league. She's gotten better every year. She's a playmaking post, but I think that to what level she can excel, how much she can bother Asia, because I think there was like it's kind of a difficult matchup against the Storm when you have both Ezzy and Dominic Malonga kind of taking turns, taking stabs at guarding her, and obviously she destroyed that matchup, as she kind of has against everybody that she's gone up against. But that's going to be key down the stretch for this Fever team. And then there's the others. Lexi Hall made some massive plays down the stretch for Indiana in that decisive game 3. Whether it was the game-winning steal against Ryan Howard, the driving layup a couple plays before that. She's also one of those players that can do a lot of little things that contribute to winning, and also she's one of their best 3-point shooting threats as well. So it's going to come down to all of the others, Aerial Powers, like Shea Petty, like these players that again, like probably wouldn't have dreamed a couple weeks ago that they'd be in this position in the semifinals in the rotation for this Indiana team, but that's the way the cookie crumbled, and players went down, and Indiana has been really good at finding the right players to add even throughout the season, whether it was Ari McDonald or Chloe Bibby, 2 players that were really excelling before they themselves got hurt, but did they just have had a knack for not only finding talent, but then kind of merging that talent into their existing roster. So I do think Las Vegas is going to pull away with this for, in the series, but I have them winning in 5 as well. So I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. Probably everybody's counting out this Fever team, but this Fever team has hung in there all season long. They were the 6th seed in a league with lots of talent and lots of parity, despite all the injury struggles, despite losing DeWanna Bonner midseason by her own choice, obviously. Caitlin Clark only plays in 13 games. But Stephanie White and her staff have been phenomenal. And so I do think that you're going to see this Fever team steal 2 games from Las Vegas, and everybody's going to be shocked. But in a game 5, I'm going to pick Las Vegas. So I think both of these series are going 5, and then we're going to have a hell of a WNBA finals between the Aces and the Lynx, which is what I think everybody wants to see at this point, or at least the average WNBA fan. Obviously, if you're root for Phoenix or Indiana, you're going to want to see those teams compete. But I think everybody wants to see Nafisa against Asia. It's been a debate all season long about who's the MVP, who's the best player in the world. Obviously, the Aces have won 2 titles already with this core, or at least with the Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, Asia Wilson core. And then you're also going to see the Liberty, or you're also going to see Minnesota try to go for their first with this group. So I'm looking forward to that being the WNBA finals. That's kind of what I'm hoping for at this point, just because I do want to see the best of the best. And those have been the 2 best teams all season long. But I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for either of these teams to advance to that WNBA finals. So really looking forward to that series. We'll have coverage here on WNBA Today on CLNS throughout the rest of the postseason, throughout the next couple of rounds here. We'll also have postgame pressers, news clips, all sorts of things, guests coming on as well, some exciting guests coming up. So leave a comment, feel free to message if you have things that you'd like to see us discuss here on this channel. We kind of jumped in the middle of things in the middle of the postseason, but we wanted to get things started as soon as we could. So it's been a lot of fun to talk about this league. I love watching the WNBA. It's been an awesome couple of weeks of basketball. Postseason has just been 10 out of 10. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thanks for watching as always, and we'll be back with some more content soon.